Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So nice to be able to see you all come this evening. It's our health segment time, and it's so wonderful to see each one of you attend this evening. And for those of you listening out in the downlink sites, we also give you a very special welcome tonight. My topic for this evening is cigarette smoking. This is a problem that is huge within the South Pacific region today. Cigarette smoking destroys the lives of so many people around the world. It is a huge problem that the world needs to know and needs to understand, even more so people like us right here in the South Pacific. In one of the presentations that I shared, I talked about the risk factors for lifestyle diseases. The first, as you can see up on the slide, is unhealthy diet. The second is physical inactivity. The third is tobacco smoking or cigarette smoking. And the fourth, alcohol. Tonight, come with me and let's share with you the problems relating to cigarette smoking in our region right here in the South Pacific. It is interesting to note, and I think it is so important that we understand that cigarette smoking kills around 3 to 5 million people every 12 months around the world. The South Pacific region contributes significantly to this number of people, death of this number of people around the world today. It is a huge problem, and it is so important that people like yourself right here in Samoa know and understand the dangers of cigarette smoking. Let me just take you now. Let's take a journey inside the body. Right up here in the chest, we have two important structures called lungs. Not one, we have two. And you can appreciate on the screen, right lung and left lung. The main function of our lungs is for the exchange of gases. We breathe in oxygen from the air. It goes into the lungs. It goes into the tiny tubes, into the tiny crevices that is in the lungs until it reaches a particular place in the lung where it comes in contact with a blood vessel, and the oxygen then transfers and it goes into the blood vessel, into the red blood cells. The red blood cells carries that oxygen to every part of the body. Amazing. And at the same time, carbon dioxide, which is produced in the body, is transported back through the blood, back to the lungs, through that special area. It goes back into the lung, and you breathe that carbon dioxide out when you breathe out. You understand what I'm saying? So when you breathe in, oxygen goes into the lungs, transfers into the blood, into the red blood cells. It goes to all the cells of the body, the 100 trillion cells. The cells use it to break down sugar, to produce energy so that you can be strong. At the same time, carbon dioxide is produced. It goes back to the lungs. You breathe out, and carbon dioxide leaves the body, more oxygen goes in, and that's what happens inside the lungs. God made the lungs for fresh air to go in, not dirty air. All right, and so it's very important. We need to remember that. Now, smoking, as I've said, is a major problem in the South Pacific. We have some of the highest rates of smoking in the world. Let me give you some statistics here. In Australia, it's about 12%. When you look at the South Pacific Island countries, we have some major problems. Kiribati, 60% of males smoke cigarettes. Fiji has the lowest. You Fijian here? Congratulations. Go back and tell them, bring it down to 0. You're 37%. Nauru, about 48. Samoa, I've written it down in slightly bigger letters so you don't miss it. It's about 40% of your population. Let's see here. 56.3% of males and about 21.8% of females smoke cigarette. And then as you go down, my country is doing very, very, very bad, you know. We're about 50% of the population. Oh. And then you have Tonga and Tuvalu. But as you can appreciate, compared with other countries of the world, like the developed countries, we have some of the highest rates of smoking in the world. And it's becoming a big worry, a big problem in our region. Let's look at cigarette smoke just very briefly and see what sort of things are inside cigarette smoke. There's about 4,000 chemicals or poisons and irritants inside cigarette smoke. There's about 43 cancer-causing substances in one cigarette smoke. There's carbon monoxide, which is a deadly gas. You know, when you switch on your car and the gas that comes out at the end, you know, at the exhaust, is carbon monoxide, a very poisonous gas. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. It also has what we call nicotine. And nicotine is that drug in cigarette smoke that makes people want to smoke all the time. Once you get hooked, it hooks you. And it's nicotine that does that hooking. All right? And so it's so important to understand that. Now let me share with you some other poisons that is in cigarette. So we talked about nicotine. There's hydrogen cyanide. There's acetone. There is lead. There's carbon monoxide, we've already mentioned. There's benzene. There's more than 600 different additives. There's mercury. There's arsenic. There's phenol. There's DDT. You know, when I was small back home, we have malaria, so they come with DDT. They spray the houses. You take DDT when you smoke cigarette, you know. All right, what else? There's tar. There's ammonia. There's cadmium, you name it. There's 4,000 chemicals or poisons in cigarette smoke. It's something that is not worth taking into the body. Nicotine, let's just talk a little bit about nicotine. Nicotine is that hook that hooks people when they smoke cigarette. It is addictive. It is destructive. You need to know this. It kills. It's dangerous. It is destructive to the body. Now, there are two things about nicotine that you need to know. Number one, it constricts the blood vessels. What do I mean by that? You have a good blood vessel, all right? It's nicely open, if you can look here. When you smoke cigarette, what happens is that blood vessels goes smaller. It goes narrower. It constricts. Okay? That's one thing nicotine does. The second thing that nicotine does is it builds up cholesterol inside the blood system. Like I mentioned, cigarette smoking in previous nights, cigarette smoking builds up cholesterol and can lead to heart attack. It can lead to stroke and problems of that nature. And so this is the second problem with nicotine. First of all, it constricts the blood vessels, and then it builds up cholesterol, and it can obstruct the blood vessels. And it can be to the brain. It can be to the heart. It can be to the kidneys. And so it's so important that we know this. Now, let me share something else with you. Because it constricts the blood vessels, and because it blocks and narrows the blood vessels through cholesterol, the results are, number one, high blood pressure or hypertension that I talked about in one of the nights. It can cause damage to the arteries in the body, making them hard and stiff. And it can result in decreased blood flow to the body organs, especially to the brain and hands and legs, and can result in stroke and in heart attack, as I've already mentioned to you just a few minutes ago. And so it's so important. Now, if you look at this slide, this is one thing that cigarette smoke is very good at doing. It causes constriction of the blood vessels, and it causes buildup of cholesterol. And what happens next is this part of the heart does not receive any blood, and this is what we call a heart attack. And it's happening all the time today. It's one of the biggest risk factors for heart disease, dear brothers and sisters. Let me show you something else. Maybe you've never seen this before. Okay? These are fingers. This is a patient who's come to the doctor saying, "My fingers are dying, doctor." And the doctor says to the lady, "Are you a smoker?" And the lady says, "Yes." You know what's happening here? There is very little blood supply going to the fingers. Why? Because cigarette smoke constricts the blood vessels. You remember what I said earlier? It reduces the caliber of the blood vessels, and so the fingers die. Let me show you something else. This is interesting. Let me show you something else. This is a man, he's only about 25 years old, a big smoker. And you will notice that his big toe and the second and the third are all dead. This is not diabetes, folks. This is not diabetes. This is as a result, this has come about because of cigarette smoke. And we give it a special name. We call it Buerger's disease. Not burger that you buy from McDonald's, but Buerger's disease. They sound very much alike. Yeah, burger, can cause this sort of problem as well if you have diabetes. All right, so this is Buerger's disease. Buerger's disease is specific to cigarette smoking. Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? Very important. This is very important to know. All right, now the question comes, does Buerger's disease happen in the South Pacific? The answer is what? Yes. This is a patient of mine. All right. And he came to me one day and he said, "Doctor, my big toe is dying." All right. And I said, "Are you a smoker?" And he said, "Yes, but we must check, make sure you don't have diabetes." So we checked, no diabetes here, but he's a chronic smoker. He smokes all the time. And so the only way we can treat this man is chop that toe. And then one day, and I said to him, no more smoking, brother. He kept on smoking, and so he went to see another doctor because the second one's gone. And so the doctor cut him the second one. All right. And then I saw him about 2 years later somewhere else. And he came to me because he had no choice. He came to me and he said, "Doctor, I think my the fourth one is now going out." And I said, "Have you been smoking?" And he said, "Yes, doctor, sorry, I've been smoking." And I said, "Well, you can continue smoking. So we'll cut the fourth one and the fifth one, and then we'll slowly cut up the leg." And he said, "Doctor, I think I better stop now." You know, this is a serious problem, and we do see this problem in the South Pacific today. It's clear. Now, this is a lady. This is Marie, and it's a powerful little statement that she's sharing with us here. "I chose to smoke, and this is what it cost me." Now, brothers and sisters, this proves the fact that cigarette smoke causes constriction of the blood vessels in the heart, in the brain, in the kidneys, and in the extremities, and in many other parts of the body. So don't think that cigarette smoking is an innocent habit, because it can slowly destroy your life. It is so important that we understand this. Carbon monoxide. Let me tell you something interesting about carbon monoxide. It's that gas that comes out, from the exhaust of a vehicle. Now, if you breathe that, Let me just explain. If you breathe that, what happens is carbon monoxide is a poison, terrible, dangerous poison that hemoglobin, when oxygen goes into the blood from the lungs, it goes into red blood cells. Inside the red blood cells is what we call hemoglobin, all right? And it's in the hemoglobin that oxygen resides, and the blood takes it everywhere in the body. But what happens is, when carbon monoxide comes, so you have one carbon monoxide here, you have one oxygen here, you know what will get into the hemoglobin very quickly? Carbon monoxide. Not oxygen, carbon monoxide. Hemoglobin has about 250 times affinity for carbon monoxide and not oxygen. All right? And so people who smoke cigarette think that they're okay, but they're running around, walking around with low levels of oxygen, in fact. There's more carbon monoxide in their blood than oxygen in their blood. It's interesting to note this. This is very important information for you and for me tonight. Tar. Just listen to this. This is very interesting. A person who smokes an average of 20 cigarettes a day for 1 year takes up about 1 cup of tar into his lungs. 1 cup of tar. Those tar they used to pour on the roads making the concrete, the tar seal. We take some of that when we smoke cigarette as well, you see. So it's very important. Much of this tar remains, leading to blackened lungs. I'll show you some lungs very shortly. Now listen to this, because I think this is very important. Male smokers are 22 times more likely to develop lung cancer than those who have never smoked, and female smokers are 12 times more likely to develop lung cancer than those who have never smoked. So the incidence of lung cancer increases dramatically when we smoke cigarettes. Now, I'd like you to look at this one, because I think this is an interesting little slide here. This is inside your throat. We have put in a machine called a bronchoscope, and we put him through the mouth into the trachea, and now you're looking at the road that goes to the right lung and the road that goes to the left lung. Now this man starts smoking, and you can see smoke whirling down into the two openings inside the lungs. And then what happens is, after a while, you don't see any more space or openings, because smoke has completely filled this airway. And smoke now enters the lungs. All right? And so this is important to know. Now, come with me and let me show you something interesting. The airways are lined with little hairs called cilia. All right? Cilia. They protect the airways. They clean up the airways. When you have dust, they clean it up. They push the dust or the dirt up towards the throat so that it'll make you feel like coughing, and you cough it out. What happens is that when we smoke, cigarette smoke destroys the hairs, the little tiny hairs that protect the lungs. So if you can, with a little bit of an imagination, you can appreciate that there's hairs on top here. And if you can see here, this is cilia. There's tiny little hairs right on the top there. They help to protect the lung. Cigarette smoke destroys the cilia so that you don't have any protection against dust, dirt, tar, and all the rubbish that can go inside the lungs. And it predisposes people to developing lung cancer very, very easily. And so this is important to know. Remember cilia. Effects of smoking on the airways, just very briefly now as a summary. Smoking increases mucus in the large airways and the lungs, leading to more cough and sputum. It causes inflammation so that there's pus development inside, so that when you cough, you're always coughing out something that is thick. Then there's hardening and narrowing of the airways. More lung infections and reduced lung function develops. The lung is now less able to carry out the exchange work of oxygen coming in and carbon dioxide going out. And then it goes on. The lung now is less able to fight infection. And eventually what happens is the lung tissue is now destroyed. So cigarette smoking is definitely a dangerous thing to experience. Now, this is a nice, clean lung, as you can appreciate. This is a true lung. Okay, let me show you another picture of a dirty lung. This is the lung of a smoker. These are two real lungs. Okay, two real lungs. Now, so Dr. Kuma, okay, you can say, Dr. Kuma, thank you for not lying to us. I hope you see it that way, all right? Because this, you can see this is all tar accumulating inside the lung. Let me show you something else. Let's now go quickly, because I think our time is almost up. If this thing works, yes. In a year, as I said, about 1 cup of tar, you squeeze the lung, and this is the sort of thing that you will get in a beaker. The lung becomes very dirty. All right, so we're talking facts here. This is terrible. Now you look at this lung. This is a real lung of a person that has died from lung cancer. It is all black, as you can appreciate. And what do you see here? This whitish looking tissue. What is that? If you've never seen lung cancer before, that is lung cancer. All right. It's destructive. It kills very quickly. Lung cancer is dangerous. Lung cancer is the #1 cancer in the world caused by cigarette smoking. All right. It's so important to know and to understand this. So important. Now you look at these two lungs. You can see there's cancer sitting up at the top there. All right. The lung looks terrible. It looks black. It looks abnormal. All right. And then if you look on this side, this lung is all puffed up because the structures inside this lung has been destroyed by cigarette smoke. And so we call this emphysema. I'm sure some of you have heard of that term before. So that when they breathe, they are very short of breath. They breathe in okay, but when they breathe out, it takes such a long time to breathe out. And they don't enjoy life at all. All right? And so lung cancer, emphysema. These are some of the major problems that cigarette smoking can cause in the lungs. Now, I shared this with you previously. Cigarette smoking contributes to 11 major cancers in the human body. Now, let me just run through this. Lung cancer, cancer of the mouth, cancer of the throat, cancer of the voice box, cancer of the esophagus, the tube connecting the mouth to the stomach, cancer of the stomach, cancer of the kidney, bladder cancer, cancer of the pancreas, cancer of the blood, cancer of the cervix. All the cancers that cigarette smoke contributes to. It is so important, Samoa, that we realize this and take some actions against cigarette smoking. Heart attack is one major complication of cigarette smoke, and we've already touched on that. I will not talk too much on that this evening. What about the baby? What about the baby? Cigarette smoke and a pregnant mother destroys the baby big time, especially the brain. Let me show you an interesting little picture here. Now, these are two brains of two 6 weeks old children or babies. You will note here the size of the brain of a 6 weeks old child or baby whose mother has never smoked. Look here on this side and appreciate the fact that this is a 6 weeks old brain of a little baby whose mother smokes cigarette. You can see the differences in brain development between the two. There is no question, oh brothers and sisters, that cigarette smoke destroys brain development of young babies. Big time, and it's so important that we understand and that we know that. Now, I'm sure you've read a little story about this little child. He's only three years old. He smokes about 1.5 packets every day. Okay, this is Indonesia. And you know where he learned this from? Where did he learn this from, daddy and mummies? From parents. All right, it's so important that we set good examples in our homes, daddy and mummy. There's something else about cigarette smoking in the home that you need to know. And we call that passive smoking. If you're smoking in the home, your children are breathing the naked smoke. You breathe smoke that goes through a little filter. Your children, your wife, your family are breathing the naked smoke that has all the poisons inside it. Passive smoking is dangerous for anybody who breathes in that naked smoke. In the bus, in the office, in the home, in the club. And so it is so important that we have laws that guide us, that protect people from passive smoking. It is dangerous. It can lead to the development of complications, especially lung cancer, in those that may have never smoked in their lives. And so this is a very, very important information for us to realize. For those of you who are maybe older than 50, you would recognize this man. This is the Marlboro man. Okay, to be honest with you, he's now dead because of smoking. Okay, he died because of smoking. The truth of the matter is, cigarette kills. And this is what it does. It causes so much problem. This is cancer of the throat that has come out and has invaded the skin outside. This is the truth about cigarette smoke. There is nothing good about cigarette smoking. Cigarette companies are not interested in your life, in your health, in your future. They only want your what? They only want your money. And that's all they are interested in. It is so important that we understand and we realize that. So why stop smoking? There's some very good benefits of that. You can have better health, less disease, breathe easier, you can have more energy, you can have better health for family, and you can save a lot of money. Yes, you can save a lot of money. Now, I'm coming to the end of this presentation. Cigarette takes away self-control. You remember the first night I shared with you the amazing facts about the brain. Listen to this one. Nicotine is an addictive drug as heroin. It acts on the brain like morphine, cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol, even though you don't get drunk with cigarette smoke. Very important to understand and realize that. Let me show you something here that is very, very important. The brain, especially the frontal lobe of the brain, take note of this. The front part of the brain controls judgment, reasoning, choice, decision-making, self-control, learning, memory. It is the seat of our intellectuality. It is the seat of our conscience, and it is the seat of our spirituality. The frontal lobe of the brain. But listen to this, because this is amazing. This is a picture of a SPECT scan. This is like a CT scan or an MRI, but a special one, a special variant of those. And this is a SPECT scan of the brain. This is a normal SPECT scan. All right? It looks smooth. Only one little hole there, as you can see. But this is the brain. This is the frontal lobe of the brain. Look at this one. Look at this one. This is a SPECT scan of a person who smokes cigarette and who takes caffeine with cigarette smoking. You will appreciate some major changes in the frontal lobe of the brain, even though you don't feel any problems. It is already affecting the frontal lobe of the brain. You can appreciate the black spots there. And that basically means that there is very little blood supply that is now going to the front part of the brain because of the fact that cigarette causes the constriction that I mentioned to you about. It is so crucial, so important for us to understand this. I'd like to end with this text because I think it is a powerful little text. The thief does not come except to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But I have come, Jesus says, that they may have life, and that they may have it more abundantly. It is my prayer this evening, dear brothers and sisters, that we realize our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, that we have a responsibility to care for it. It is my prayer this evening that if you are hooked on cigarette smoke, come to Jesus, because He is the answer to your problem. May God bless each one of you tonight.